Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Multiply You podcast. My name is Austin Clark, and this episode is brought to you by Moxie Pest Control. Right now, one of our big focuses is quality growth. We do that a variety of different ways. One of our focuses right now is growth via acquisition. We've got Brian Smithson on today. He's been a longtime friend. Very, very excited for some of the tidbits that he'll be able to give everyone about his path and journey and just his experience so far. But before we get into that, I wanted to share just a brief experience. And Brian, check this out and listen. And I know that you've been helping me out along the way with some of these. But if you know somebody that owns a pest control company that has 3 or 4 or 5 more vehicles on the road, get them in communication with me, please. We would love to be able to visit with them. I remember when I first started talking with Randy Johnson of Professional Exterminators, he wasn't really interested in selling his company at the time. But the more we talked, I think he became more comfortable with doing that. And Brian, I'm telling you, and you can vouch for this too, but now today, I think that he's living more of his best life. I think that we set him at ease. He's relaxing more. He's golfing more. I don't think that he even thought that he could sell his company for what we bought it for, but we did, and so I don't think he was too upset about that. And so life is good for Randy. He's appreciating that. So again, if you know anybody that owns a pest control company, please have them reach out to me. They can text me directly at 480-254-9730. They can email me directly at aclark@moxiepestcontrol.com. That's ACLARK @moxiepestcontrol.com. If you go onto our website and submit a form, that'll go to our national team. It'll probably never make it to me. And so either text or email me directly. Okay, Brian, really excited to be able to have you on today. Thanks for agreeing to come on. Brian is an absolute rock star. He has been in the pest space now for, I think pushing definitely over a decade, maybe pushing about 15 years now. He is very, very well respected inside and outside of the industry. You are also an Associate Certified Entomologist, which I think I was trying to do the math earlier. I would think that probably less than a tenth of a percent of all either pest business owners or applicators hold that credential. It's just a killer certification. Most people just don't have it. You have tons of direct sales experience. You have a lot of distributing experience, which is kind of a rare thing for someone in your position to have, the distributing side. And I mean, operationally, as far as a pest company goes, you've held probably about every role anyone could think of, from sales representative to service manager to managing some of our most valuable departments with either retention or inside sales. There's just not a lot that you haven't done. When you're not dreaming about bugs, I know that you love the outdoors. You love to spend time with your family. Big hunter, big fisher, and really just love spending time out in nature. So, Brian, so great to have you on. Thank you for agreeing to this. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for the kind words. I hope I can live up to them.
Yeah, you better. Or people that are listening, they're going to be disappointed. So we visited before. I think that we'll obviously have you on as a regular guest. You've got just so much to offer the pest space and pest industry. And, our purpose of this show is to really provide quality content and principles that those inside of the pest space can use to either make their lives more simple or more profitable, or to be able to do more with less. I feel that we've just made so many mistakes together. Well, I'll speak for me. I've made so many mistakes, and we would just love to be able to share some of those tips and tricks with others. And so whether you're a pest owner, whether you're a manager inside of a pest control company, whether you work in the office or out in the field, or you deal with commercial or industrial or residential or whatever it is, we would hope that some of the things that we share today and throughout the show would be valuable and helpful to you. And so I know that we'll have you on as a regular guest, Brian, because of the experience that you've got. I mean, in the next 30, 40 minutes or whatever it is, I know that we won't be able to cover all of it, but what we did talk about covering today is kind of your path. And so if you could walk us through some of your career path, are some of the experiences that you've had, maybe neat experiences along the way. Share with us a little bit about where you've been and what you're doing now and where you're going.
Yeah, I'll kind of give, I think, a 30,000 foot overview. And then if you want to delve into anything specifically, we can kind of break that down. If you have any questions, more about any of the individual stops or steps along my path to where I'm at today. So I never dreamt about getting into pest control ever. I think a lot of people find out that the pest industry is just a really good industry in general. It's filled with hardworking, honest people that do a tremendous good for the world. I mean, we've done a lot, pest control in general, people don't think about that oftentimes, but, we really do prevent a lot of illnesses, from sanitation and removing rodents and, cockroaches and things like that actually can spread a lot of diseases. And so we do a lot. And once I got into it and realized that, I think it's just kind of stuck with me. So I got into pest control in 2009. I think in some ways, my path is mirrored yours, just maybe or at least paralleled yours in some ways. But I got into it just looking for a summer job. I was looking to do, help out with college, help out pay the bills for the summer, so I could, spend time with, going to school the rest of the year. And so got into it doing maybe the most terrible thing in the world, door-to-door sales, which I had no experience in door-to-door sales before, Moxie. And so got into it doing door-to-door sales. Did that for my first summer was actually in 2009 out in Raleigh, North Carolina. And then when this branch opened up here, me being a Mesa boy, ever since I was, probably 3 years old, you opened the branch here in 2011. And so it made sense to not travel anywhere else. And so stayed here in 2011, did the direct sales. And then in 2012 and 13, had the opportunity, tremendous opportunity. And it really, that probably the first 2 years of door-to-door sales and then the 2 years of management experience in the door-to-door sales realm definitely molded habits and values that has carried me throughout the rest of my life by far. And so did that through 2013. 2013 was able to come in to help with some of the operational side of things and was a service manager from 2013 until I think middle of 2016. Had the opportunity then to just get different, experience in the industry. Moved up to Portland, Oregon. Had never been to Oregon before, but moved into the distribution side of things with Target Specialty Products and was able to gain a lot of experience with business-to-business sales, which I didn't have experience in before that. And so it was able to branch me into a different side of the industry, a different side of sales that I didn't have experience on. And so was able to move with my family up there we were up there for about 2.5 years up in the Pacific Northwest. I covered all of Oregon and Washington and northern Idaho, and was able to gain just a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience on both the technical side of things, business to business sales, building relationships, long form sales. And then, being an Arizonan born and raised, and just had the opportunity to come back in the I think it was the beginning of December of 2000, and I think it was 18. Yeah, so it was a little over 2 years since I've been back, and since I've been back here, I've done a number of things. You know what I mean? Most recently, helped manage a couple departments in the office with sales and our retention department. And then have helped you out a little bit with facilitating some acquisition stuff. So that's
awesome.
Taking me from 2009 to we're almost 2021. It's crazy to think.
Long time, man.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been a great ride. So I wanted to address something, perhaps the elephant in the room, right out of the gates. I'm learning a little bit more about this. The last decade for me has just really been with my nose and head down, just grinding to build a business and scale a business and grow a business. And so, one of the regrets I have is not making more friends in the industry, if you will. So you talk about direct sales or door-to-door sales. Um, that's a tough, very competitive space. And the elephant in the room is that is not the most, if you will, like respected way to grow in the pest industry. And I think that you were able to learn about that in a whole different way when you went over to kind of the distributing side. Could you speak to that for a moment and just what any of that is about?
Yeah, I think overall, well, I mean, I think the elephant within the door-to-door realm too is door-to-door sales does not have a great reputation by just, I think anybody, if you were to go just pull 100 people randomly on the street, what they think of door-to-door salesmen, it's kind of like a snake oil salesman or a used car salesman. That's kind of the reputation that they have. And so I never, that was part of my reluctancy and I think hesitancy to get into door-to-door sales in general was me not knowing and me being a complete layman with that industry. I didn't want to get into door-to-door sales just because I thought you had to lie, cheat, and steal in order to make it happen. And when I started looking into door-to-door sales, I looked into alarm sales. There's satellite sales. There's pest control sales, and there's all sorts of different companies within those realms. And it's sad to say that the stigma of door-to-door sales, unfortunately, is true for the most part, with emphasis on that. Because in my experience, one of the things that led me to Moxie, I had zero connection to Moxie besides you, who I went to high school with, but we weren't even that good. We knew each other in high school, but we weren't, best buds in high school or anything like that by any stretch. And so what led me to Moxie was in talking with some friends that did satellite sales, security sales, researching all sorts of things, and then meeting the founder of, and obviously knowing a mutual friend of ours named Trent, and then also having an opportunity to meet the founder of Moxie, going out and watching you do door-to-door sales. All the stigmas about door-to-door sales, I just did not find at Moxie. We didn't teach lying in any way, shape, or form. We didn't even teach little white lying. That was never condoned in any of our teaching or trainings or in the manual. That was just never anything that I experienced. It was the exact opposite. Integrity and being completely honest and forthright with customers on the doors was the thing that we preached the most. And if we found out that people were doing the opposite of that, there was, some behind the scenes disciplinary things that happened, corrections to that, additional trainings to make it sure that didn't happen. And so overall, while it's definitely not the most well respected in the pest control or maybe in any industry, I found that none of the stigmas were really true within Moxie. And that was the reason why I think I did it in the first place, and then also did it for 4 different years.
That's great. No, thank you for kind of addressing that. And that's been some of my experience as well. And, as people ask me about my experience, I think even including my mom, I think that everyone should do direct sales with whoever they want. I'm not saying Moxie, they should do that for a year, because you just learn. Whether you do it for 4 months or a 12-month period, I'm unaware of any other way that you can get that much exposure that quickly to that many different people and learn how to communicate. And then also experience just a tremendous amount of rejection, right? Even the best people in the industry are respecting or, receiving probably a 95% rejection rate, if you will. And so I think that it really just helps to callous your mind and to make you mentally tough and to keep getting up and to keep going. What great life training, you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
So you mentioned a lot of the positions that you've held and some of your path, What's been your very favorite and why?
Man, I think my very favorite for a number of different reasons. It would probably be the management side of the sales teams that I did in 2012 and 13. And I think it's because it's not, when I say it was my favorite, it's not because it was necessarily the most fun. There's not a lot fun about door-to-door sales. But like you said, I think it's twofold. One, that exposed me as the first time in my life being having any sort of management experience, and going through the leadership training that a lot of the Moxie leaders go through with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and going through that process was life changing. On top of that, going through being able to learn to manage people was awesome. And so there's a leadership side of the management training that we had, which is more personal, which is more personal development, how to be able to come up with a plan and turn that plan into a reality with whatever that is in life. But then on top of that, learning how to recruit has been immensely valuable to me. Learning how to recruit people to going and doing something that as terrible as door-to-door sales. And then on top of that, continuing to be able to, I've always loved training and teaching. It's just been something that I've always liked it. I feel like I've always been, I was decent at door-to-door sales because I tried really, really hard. And so it was one of those things that was just, I got out of it what I put into it, which was a lot. And so being able to like train other people, help other people go through those process of learning how to effectively and honestly communicate with people, work harder than you ever thought you could. Knocking door to door in 118 degrees is not fun. It's terrible. But I think like anything in life, there was actually a separate podcast I was listening to a long time ago. It was actually a hunting podcast, surprisingly. But if you watch that show Meat Eater with Steven Ranella in any way, shape, or form, he talks about that there's different levels of like fun in life. You can go ride on a roller coaster, but nobody looks back on their life and thinks, "Oh my gosh, I rode a roller coaster. It was life changing." It's a thrill in the moment. But if you do anything that is worthwhile, but that is really, really terrible in the moment, you look back on it with a tremendous amount of fondness. And it makes you smile, and it's like why people, when they go through the military and they look back on basic training, it was a terrible experience, but they laugh about it. And it was looking back on it, it was one of the funnest experiences of their life. I think that maybe not to quite that extent, but looking back on door-to-door sales and especially management, it stretched me and it pushed me in ways that I never thought that I would be stretched and pushed. Taught me things that I never thought I would be able to learn with interpersonal skills, management skills, leadership skills, recruiting skills, just all of that focusing in. So it was a combination of personal growth, which is always uncomfortable and never, air quote, fun. But with all of that, looking back on it, I think it definitely had the biggest impact on just my life in general, with whether that's raising kids, being married, going and doing something completely new with getting into distribution. Just top to bottom, it definitely altered and changed, I think, my perception on life, and gave me skills to be successful that I don't think I would have ever had.
Well, I'm glad to have been able to do my very small part in helping facilitate terrible experiences for you to have for personal growth and development. You haven't thanked me for that in a long time.
It's been a while, but it's true. I mean, like this is getting maybe like even bigger than pest control in general, but like learning to do really, really hard things. I was listening to the Jocko Willink podcast, Jocko podcast, but I think learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable is one of the biggest things that you can learn to do in life, because you're always going to have to do uncomfortable things, whether that's, in your personal life, professional life, or whatever the case is. Learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's what door-to-door sales is. There's nothing comfortable about it. Managing the, door-to-door salesman, recruiting, that was all, I'm a very introverted person by nature. And so learning to do all of those things and be proficient at it that's exactly what it was. It was very out of my comfort zone, but it forced me into that.
So there's some of your earlier days experience, direct sales, managerial experience. Fast forward a little bit to operations. What's been your favorite, perhaps, operational role, and why?
I don't know that I don't know that I could say I have one specific favorite, because I really enjoyed being a service manager. When I got into it, I really didn't. My technical knowledge was very rudimentary at best. Um, and so managing salespeople and then managing operations people is again is a completely different exposure. Because on top of that, there was managing your chemical inventory, knowing, coming up with treatment protocols. On top of that, it was managing a fleet and maintenance of a fleet, and then hiring and, firing and disciplinary and follow up. There was some different aspects there that I didn't get to learn on the sales side as much. And then more recently, being part of our inside sales, teams, and managing that on top of our retention teams. I don't know that I could say any one of those were more of a favorite than anything else. They were different. They were just all very different.
So you took a couple of year hiatus from Moxie. You went up to the Pacific Northwest and you got into distribution. What was that about? How was that? How was that different? I mean, we kept in close contact. We're friends, right? And so we were talking regularly, and definitely a different side of the pest control space, right? You're not working at or in a pest control company, but you are providing value to them, right? By finding different ways and solutions and products to be able to use, right? To help them grow their businesses. What was that like? How was that helpful to maybe some of the things that you're doing now? What was that experience like for you?
Overall, that experience, it was great. Target treated me awesome. So when I got into, kind of rewind, I guess, a little bit, when I got out of sales and got into doing the service management here for the branch, it was different because I didn't have a lot of technical experience, and I had every manufacturer and distributor saying that their products were the best, or that their bait was the best, their residual product was the best, it was the best for scorpions, it was the best for ants. I didn't, and so I didn't know what exactly to believe, and so I kind of went back to some of the basic, scientific method approach of doing this. I started testing a lot of different products in a very controlled environment on different pests to see what really had the longest residual, what worked the best for scorpions, what worked the best for ants, what worked the best for crickets. And so I got into that, and that really helped expand my technical knowledge by just researching more, reading a lot of the Malice, handbook, hands-on experience with that. And then when I got into distribution, was able to use a lot of that product knowledge, and just of going back and testing so many different products in a controlled environment, was able to be able to speak that lingo, and be able to help a lot of pest control companies who maybe had some of those questions up in the Pacific Northwest. What is a good way to simultaneously treat bugs, lower your chemical costs, as well as reducing what we call, the industry typically calls them callbacks. We call them reservices within Moxie jargon. But how you can do kind of all of that simultaneously, at once, because there are ways to be able to reduce your chemical costs by treating in the proper manner, by treating with the proper usage in terms of your actual mix rates. And there is a difference between generic products and name brand products. Both of them have their place, but what is that place? Is it a startup company, or is it a company that's more well established, that isn't trying to pinch every penny because you can reduce your callbacks that way? And so being able to expand that technical knowledge there was, and help some companies in the Northwest, was really good. On top of that, Target very much invested into their employees, because they wanted their employees to be able to sell based off of technical knowledge and what they called consultative sales. So being able to consult with people to be able to expand their portfolio and to help them out within a company. And so I was able to.
Well, and Brian, I remember those times too, when you were kind of in the laboratory, right? It was, everyone's the best and everyone's product works the best. And until you got into the nitty gritty and doing a lot of the research and the scientific approach and kind of the controlled environment stuff. And, I think that we were really lucky too, to have such great resources. Jack McClure over at Chemtech, awesome resource in some of our earlier days. Robert Snyder over at Target has been a tremendous resource and a tremendous help. And there have been others too. Some of the representatives over at MGK, right? And so it really, yeah. And so it's been nice to be able to have that type of relationship. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, no, and so that just helped out a lot. I mean, one of my favorite experiences, I think, overall, with my time at Target, I was able to, very fortunate, because this does not open up to very many people. There's probably even fewer people that have gone to Bobby Corrigan's Rodent Academy in New York City than even have their ACE. I was able to go and if you, Bobby Corrigan he's one of my favorite speakers to hear about, because he can speak the most high level PhD language that you can think of when it comes to rodents, but he can also make it the most applicable to just the technician who's wanting to get rid of rodents at somebody's house. And so going and sitting and being a part of his Rodent Academy was just awesome. I was able to have dinner with him. I was able to go out and walk the city with Bobby Corrigan. And Target afforded me that opportunity. It's one of those ones that if you're not if you're not one of a select few people, it's not like he just opens it up to very many people. It's really specifically for the Department of Health of the New York City. And then he opens up to 3 or 4 or 5 other people that are either on the distribution or manufacturing side to go do that. It's not like just random companies can go show up at his Rodent Academy, or you can even pay for it. He doesn't open it up to that.
Well, and I remember you talking about that experience. You loved it, right? And we've certainly got rodents here in Phoenix and in Tucson, but nothing like they've got in your territories up in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, that puts our rodent issues in Phoenix or in Arizona to shame. And then you talk about cities like Chicago, right? Or New York. It takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, and it was really cool gaining that experience at the Rodent Academy. It was something totally different. Was able to go. I mean, Sylvia, Kenmere, who's now at BASF, but she was the technical or director of training, I think, at Target. She did all sorts of different things. She started the West Coast Rodent Academy. They do a termite academy. Was able to go do a lot of different things. Was able to learn a lot from her. Going to, whether it was Pest World or some of the big conventions that they have in the Pacific Northwest, like at Hood River, they bring all sorts of different, Paul Bello. Gosh, I'm trying to think of all the people that they brought in. Bedbug Central was able to go to their stuff for bed bugs with some of the seminars that they do. Was just able to see just exposed to tons of academics, and do tons of workshops, which just further expanded my my pest control knowledge. It was incredible.
Well, and I know too that relatively recently, I know that you've been participating a lot in the AZPPO, right? And you've been able to meet some really neat people there. And I think through that association, you've kind of, if you will, you've kind of been able to pay it forward in a way that maybe it had been paid forward with you. And so I know that you've had a handful of people, Corey Hodnett over at Green Machine, over and down, to be able to share some of your experiences and, how they may streamline some sorts of things there. Darren Hunsaker, I know that you guys have developed a relationship over at All Clear and, doing some of the same sorts of things. And so I know that as we've either put on different events or you've been participating more in some of the industry associations, I know that one of the things that you've enjoyed is being able to give back in that way and, provide, just your experience and perspective, which has been cool. So, so President Obama, we're not going to start talking politics, but years ago, and I'm not sure, well, that would be a lie. I definitely know how you lean, but however listeners lean or not, it doesn't really matter. President Obama said something years ago that he just got slaughtered in the media for. And I don't think that he should have. He said something to the effect of, I think it was relating to businesses, or maybe it was college education, but saying, hey, you didn't build your business. You were a part of it, but others did. Your second grade teacher helped doing that. Your employees helped to do that. All the experience that you've gained along the way has helped you to do that. And so I wanted to and I don't think it was right what was done. You know what I mean? They snippeted that piece out and made him look to say something that I don't think that he really did. I think the true message was, hey, where you are today is accumulation of a lot of experience and a lot of people's efforts. And so I wanted to bring that more granular to you. Who have been some people, Brian, along the way that have either and you've mentioned a few as far as providing either different opportunities, but who have been some of those people that have influenced your thinking, perhaps helped you to get to where you are right now, that have really helped out in your career path so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting, and not just because you're doing the podcast, but definitely like our relationship and you getting me into pest control, and one of the things that I think that not only you espouse, but you're really good at with everybody else around you is there's the adage that everybody says you always have to, constantly be improving and constantly be getting better. And everybody talks about that. I don't see a lot of people do it. You're definitely one that like forces and pushes your people in a good way to always be getting better, always improving, and always, leveling up, because you do that too. Like you do things intentionally that you don't want to do because it's going to make you better. And so working with you has definitely helped, been tremendous. Jason Walton, obviously, the founder of Moxie and the guy who started it all. He was the one that really did a lot of the leadership training and the sales has been tremendous. But getting out of that and getting into, I think, just industry wide, I've had a good relationship with the Target representative, obviously before I got in, went over to Target, but Robert Snyder has been awesome, with, not only do I have a personal relationship and him and I are really good friends now, but just in how he's been able, just in the way that he conducts himself, he will do something intentionally detrimental for him if it's better for a customer, and if it helps somebody else out. The guy's very service oriented, and he's very tremendous with that. And so being able to learn that on the distribution side of things, again, he would do something intentionally for a customer, even if it was detrimental to him. If it was better for the customer, he would do it. And so learning that life experience, from him, how to do that within, on distribution, really helped mold me there. I got to be pretty close with, he was technically my boss's boss over at Target, but, Bobby Maston, who was, the director of sales for the entire Western, I think the whole West Coast. I think it might even might be west of the Mississippi, over at Target, but, tremendous man. I loved getting to know him. He has great technical knowledge. He's been in distribution for a long time. He really had that same mentality of Robert of, hey, if it's best for the customer, like, do it, and it'll work out at some point eventually. It might take a while, but down the road it's going to work out, and you should just do it because that's the right thing to do. And then I mentioned her also as well, but Sylvia Kenmere, she helped. She pushed me to get my ACE when I was at Target. I just didn't have, it just, for a number of different reasons, it didn't work out at the time. She gave me a hard time in a good way, to make sure I went and got that. But she helped. She helped expand my technical knowledge there too. And so just being able to, I actually went to the Rodent Academy. She was there. She helped Bobby Corrigan do the Rodent Academy out there. Her and Bobby are pretty good friends, and so was able to, she definitely helped out a lot with, with all that. And I think lastly too, with just operational management, a coworker of ours here, who I've now for, I don't know how many years. I mean, Travis, there's a lot of smart people that are out there. Travis is definitely one of the smartest. I mean, that guy is just incredible. I mean, he runs laps around me intellectually, but he also runs laps around me with just how hard he can work. That guy, I've always tried to pride myself in working really, really, really hard, and the guy can just run laps around me. So he's been very inspiring that way. Just very inspiring that way. The guy's not only just smart, he works. He's a definition of work really, really hard and work really, really smart.
Isn't it kind of depressing for you and I, mere mortals, like to work with Travis? I mean, I've actually just kind of given up. it's like, yeah, anyway, no, Travis is absolutely
I think
amazing.
in any
And
industry, he could go and shine big time. I mean, big time. And um, we're both, just very lucky to have a guy like him that can push us as well that way. Again, he's smart. He's constantly getting smarter and better. I mean, he's got his MBA. I mean, he graduated with, I don't know what his GPA was from ASU. You probably know better than I, but did he graduate Soomers? I mean, he's just ridiculous though. Like he graduated like top of his class at, the WP Carey School of Business while working 60 or 70 hours a week here. And he was already smart before he went and did that. But on top of that, he reads probably a book a week or every 2 weeks or something. I mean, it's just, he didn't stop and rest on his MBA. I mean, he continued to go from there. So the guy's incredible.
no, he's great. He'd be a great one to have on sometime soon too. Just the experience that, he has is just unparalleled. Well, Brian, again, I know that we'll have you on again. But kind of in closing the last couple of moments here, what are, there's a lot of people listening. There's a lot of pest control business owners listening. There's a lot of pest managers listening. There's a lot of service technicians and office people listening in the pest space. And again, this is a whole other and a whole just different deal. But what would be a tidbit or two, to kind of whet people's appetites for the next one? What are some nuggets that you could share with them or give with them? What's something you could share with them that would give them an extra hour in a day, or just improve their life, right? Just be able to multiply whatever it is that they're trying to do.
I think we've read this book and we still reference it all the time. It's a short book. It's an easy read. But it really does just kind of like change your perspective on, and it's not just pest control. It's a good just business book. I haven't read it in a while. I probably need to read it again. But if you're running and if you have a business, I think the book E-Myth by Michael Gerber is just phenomenal. Like if people want to get instantly improvement, it just doesn't matter if you're running one of the huge companies, right? If you're running Truly Known, if you're running Terminex, if you're running whatever. But reading that book in general, I think the majority of people that are going to probably be listening to this podcast are going to be the 1, 2, 3 man operators, and maybe up to the one, people that have 20 or 30 routes. That book is absolutely phenomenal. It's a super easy read. I can't remember how quickly or how many pages the book is, but it's not a very big book. I think you probably have it there somewhere. I know it's in it. We have.
Yeah, I think we've got a couple of them. I mean, it's 200 pages, right? Yeah, it's
200 pages. It's not a tough read. It's an easy read, but it's one of the most applicable books I think that you can really put into it. I mean, that we really started, I think, implementing that when I was still doing service manager stuff. You know what I mean? In terms of making things a system and a process that is not dependent on you, the business owner, doing everything. How can you make it to where it's a very duplicatable and repeatable process for scheduling, answering a call, doing a service at a house, ordering chemical, inventory in your truck, whatever the case is, maintenance on your spray rig or your backpack. Any of those things, it's really, really easy to be able to just make that a system and a process to where it's anybody can do it, and it would free up a lot of people's time.
Yeah, I know as a group and an executive team, we've read that a few times, and just the concept of turnkeying everything to where the process becomes the expert, not the individual. And it's not that we don't want the individual to be the expert, we do. And so imagine if the individual and the process were both experts, how well would that work, right? Yeah. And I know that we borrow a lot of the lingo from the book, but working on the business rather than working in the business. Then I know a big focus of ours right now is as we're looking to scale, and as we have scaled and experienced tremendous growth, and we would look to continue that, is just making sure that everything that we're doing is scalable. And as we're looking to implement different policies or practices or whatever it may be, I know that we're constantly saying, okay, is this scalable at this level? This is a scalable process in a department of 20 or 25, but will it scale when that department is double that size? in a year or two, or triple that size, or whatever. Yeah, great book. Michael E. Gerber is just been amazing. We'll get him on sometime too.
That'd be tremendously valuable to anybody that listened. Anybody.
Yeah. Any other tidbits, Brian? Anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think right now, no. Go read that book if you haven't read it. It'll change your business for the better. It's simple. It's simple concepts. Doesn't make it necessarily easy to implement it always, but it's not rocket science. It's a very simple book that will just change people's business, period.
Well, and you nailed it too, right? I think that sometimes a big mistake that people make is that a lot of the concepts for running a great business, they are so simple that they discount them to the point where they say, "Oh, that couldn't change my business." And whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. But they do, and it's not just that one thing; it's hundreds, right, and thousands of iterations and services and notes and calls to be able to kind of perfect that process. And so I know that, we feel grateful about kind of where we are and some of the experiences that we've had. Brian, you're a rock star. Thank you so much for allowing me to steal some of your time this morning. I know that the listeners appreciate it. I know that we'll have you on again in the future, and we'll talk more about different experiences that you've had, different tidbits, those sorts of things. But so great to have you on. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.